Ever feel like you're drowning in information? Wanting to really get something, but not having the time to dig through a ton of stuff.
Yeah, everyone wants those shortcuts to understanding, right? Like those aha moments where it all clicks.
Exactly. That's what we aim for in these deep dives.
Mm.
And today we're tackling Liz Wiseman's multipliers. It's all about how some leaders can unlock incredible potential in the people around them.
While others, well, let's just say they kind of do the opposite.
Right. It's like some folks have this knack for making everyone around them smarter.
Exactly. Wiseman calls this the difference between diminishers and multipliers.
And it's not just theory, right? She studied over 150 leaders.
Yeah, across all kinds of fields. So it's based on real-world observation.
So for everyone listening, our mission here is to give you the tools to be a multiplier. Tap into your team's full potential, become a better leader.
Practical stuff you can use right away.
So we'll break down 7 key ideas from the book. First up, the multiplier effect itself and the mindsets behind it. Then we'll look at how to attract and grow talent, like being a talent magnet, not an empire builder.
After that, we'll get into the kind of environment you create. Wiseman talks about liberators versus tyrants.
Oh, I've definitely worked for both.
Haven't we all? We'll also look at how challengers push their teams to grow compared to the expert who always thinks they have the answers.
Then there's how decisions get made through healthy debate, or by one person calling all the shots. That's debate makers versus decision makers.
And we can't forget about accountability, right? Investors versus micromanagers. Finally, we'll pull it all together with some real strategies to become a multiplier yourself.
Lots to unpack. But let's start with the basics. What is this multiplier effect anyway?
It's all about leverage, how some leaders can get so much more out of their teams than others, like really extracting and extending the intelligence that's already there.
Instead of just relying on their own smarts.
Right. While diminishers kind of accidentally reduce the intelligence around them, it's almost like they suck the intelligence out of the room.
Wiseman tells this great story about a guy named Gabriel Oz in the Israeli army. Under one leader, Lior, he thrived. This Lior guy believed in him, gave him freedom.
So Gabriel was confident, high-performing.
But then he gets put under a different commander, Yuval, who was super critical and controlling.
And Gabriel's performance just tanked. His confidence vanished. It's a really clear example of how leadership style has a huge impact.
It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
John.
If you believe in people, they rise to the occasion.
And that's what Wiseman saw at Oracle, too. Some leaders seem to amplify everyone's smarts. Others have this draining effect.
It's like they were dimming the lights, metaphorically.
Exactly. So multipliers create what she calls collective genius,
where the team becomes more than just the individuals.
Diminishers, even if they're brilliant themselves, end up limiting everyone else.
It's like they put a ceiling on what's possible.
Wiseman worked with Greg McKeown to really study this, and they found this thing called the 2x multiplier effect. On average, multipliers get 70 to 100% of their team's intelligence and capability.
Wow.
Diminishers only get like 20 to 50%.
Right.
Think about all that wasted potential.
It's like a company running at half capacity, just because of the leadership style.
It challenges that whole add more resources mentality. Instead, multipliers think about multiplying what they already have.
So what's the difference in their thinking?
Diminishers often have a scarcity mindset. They think intelligence is limited, like a pie that has to be divided.
And if someone else gets a bigger slice?
It somehow diminishes them. They also think people can't really change or grow that much.
Multipliers, on the other hand.
They see abundance. They believe intelligence can be cultivated. They see potential everywhere.
So they're constantly looking for ways to develop people.
Which leads us to the 5 disciplines of multiplier.
Lay 'em on us.
First, there's attracting and optimizing talent. Being a talent magnet instead of an empire builder.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Second, creating an environment that brings out the best thinking. Being a liberator, not a tyrant.
I've had bosses who were definitely tyrants.
We'll get into that. Then there's extending challenges, being a challenger instead of the all-knowing expert.
The know-it-alls.
Fourth, it's about making decisions through debate. Being a debate maker, not a lone decision maker.
So valuing different viewpoints.
Exactly. And finally, it's about building ownership and accountability. Being an investor, not a micromanager.
I think we've all been micromanaged at some point.
Oh, yeah. And it's not fun. What's interesting is that multipliers aren't always the nice guys, They have high standards, they push for excellence.
So it's not about being soft.
No, but they do have a good sense of humor, often. It's like they challenge you, but also support you.
That's a good balance.
So for our listeners out there, think about your own style. Do you usually amplify the intelligence around you, or are you accidentally diminishing it?
Good question.
Yeah.
Let's dive into that first discipline. Becoming a talent magnet. What does that even mean?
It's all about attracting and growing exceptional people. You know, the best of the best.
And not holding them like some precious resource.
Exactly. That's what empire builders do. They collect talent to make themselves look good or to protect their turf.
Wiseman talks about Meg Whitman, right?
Yeah, her experience working for Mitt Romney, she says he really accelerated her career, gave her big responsibilities, supported her growth, even knowing she might leave for something bigger later on.
That's interesting. He was investing in her, even though it might not benefit him directly in the long run.
Exactly. Talent magnets think about the bigger picture.
So they create this cycle of attraction. Talented people want to work for them because they know they'll grow.
And when those people thrive, it just reinforces the leader's reputation, so they attract even more great people.
It's like a virtuous cycle.
The opposite with empire builders is a cycle of decline. People feel stifled, underutilized, so they disengage and eventually leave.
Which weakens the whole team.
Think about Ernest Shackleton recruiting for his Antarctic expedition. It was crazy dangerous. But he attracted top-notch people because he was known for pushing them to achieve extraordinary things.
So how do we actually become talent magnets?
Wiseman gives us 4 practices. First, look for talent everywhere. Don't limit yourself to the obvious places.
So recognizing that potential can come in different packages.
Exactly. Second, find people's native genius. What are they naturally good at? What energizes them?
Like their superpower.
Exactly. Then utilize them at their fullest. Align their talents with the work that needs to be done.
So they feel like you're contributing their best.
And finally, remove the blockers. Anything that's getting in their way, whether it's a bad process, a toxic team dynamic, or even your own limiting beliefs as a leader.
So for everyone listening, take a look around your team. Where do you see people's native genius? Are you giving them space to use it? Could you shift someone's responsibilities to better leverage their strengths?
It's about finding ways to let people shine.
Now, let's talk about the atmosphere leaders create. Wiseman contrasts liberators and tyrants here.
I think we can all relate to this.
Totally. She tells the story of Michael Chang. Early in his career, he admits he was more of a tyrant.
But he realized it wasn't working, so he made a conscious effort to empower his team.
He talks about creating a learning environment, right?
Yeah, where people feel safe to experiment and maybe even fail. He also made this distinction between hard opinions and soft opinions. Hard opinions are the non-negotiables, the facts, the core principles. Soft opinions are more open to debate and change.
So being clear about what's set in stone and what's up for discussion.
Exactly. Tyrants, like this character Jenna Healy in the book, they rule through fear. People are afraid to speak up, to challenge anything.
So you just end up with mediocrity. No one wants to rock the boat.
Liberators, on the other hand, like Robert Enslin, they create this energy, this resourcefulness. People want to go above and beyond.
It's intense, but in a good way.
Exactly. So think about your own team. Do people feel safe to share different viewpoints? Or are you unintentionally creating a tense environment where everyone's afraid to speak their mind?
Now let's talk about how leaders challenge their teams. Wiseman introduces this idea of the challenger.
It's not about having all the answers, but about asking the right questions.
She talks about Shy Agassi, right?
Yeah, he had this amazing career at SAP, but someone asked him this one question. What could you do to make the world a better place?
That's deep.
It made him completely rethink his path. He left SAP and founded Better Place, this company trying to revolutionize transportation with electric vehicles.
And he did it by constantly challenging his team, asking them tough questions, breaking down complex problems, and encouraging collaboration.
Exactly. And that's so different from the expert or the know-it-all. Wiseman uses Richard Palmer from SMT Systems as an example. He always needed to show off his own expertise, and he loved using those gotcha questions.
Like he was trying to trip people up.
Exactly. Yeah. And it just killed creativity. People were afraid to speak up.
So what does a challenger do differently?
Wiseman lays out 3 practices. First, they seed the opportunity. They help people see unmet needs, challenge their assumptions, and think outside the box.
Okay, I like that.
Second, they lay down a challenge. Not just a vague goal, but a concrete, well-defined challenge that pushes people to find solutions.
It's about sparking that intellectual curiosity.
Exactly. And finally, they generate belief. They make it clear that success is possible, break down big challenges into smaller steps, and celebrate those early wins.
So for our listeners, Think about a challenge you're facing. What if you reframed it as a question for your team? How could you seed that opportunity for them to come up with innovative solutions?
Now let's get into decision-making. Wiseman compares debate makers and decision makers.
And her argument is that debate actually leads to better decisions.
Exactly. She contrasts Jonathan Akers, who made all the decisions himself and ignored his task force, with people like Barack Obama and his team of rivals approach.
Or let's say at Microsoft, right?
Yeah, he intentionally created a debate around a major strategic shift. He knew the value of getting different perspectives, challenging assumptions, and making sure everyone felt heard.
So it's about harnessing that collective intelligence.
Exactly. And she outlines 3 practices for debate makers. First, frame the issue, define the questions, identify the problem, and get the right people with the right data involved.
It's about setting the stage for a productive debate.
Right. Second, spark the debate. Make sure it's engaging, fact-based, and a learning experience for everyone, and create that safe environment where people feel comfortable disagreeing.
And finally, drive a sound decision. Summarize the key points, be clear about who's making the final call, and communicate the decision and the rationale to everyone.
So for our listeners, think about a recent decision you made. Could you have benefited from more debate? Did you really seek out diverse perspectives?
It's a good reminder that even the smartest person can benefit from hearing other viewpoints.
Now let's talk about ownership and accountability. Wiseman talks about investors versus micromanagers.
That's something I think we've all experienced.
She tells this story from McKinsey in Seoul. A project leader was struggling, and a senior partner stepped in. But instead of taking over, he provided guidance, shared his expertise, and made sure the original leader still owned the project.
So he was supporting without taking control.
Exactly. Micromanagers try to control every detail, thinking it's the only way to ensure quality. But it actually creates dependency and prevents people from developing their own skills.
It's like they're constantly looking over everyone's shoulder.
Investors, on the other hand, trust their people. They define ownership clearly, provide the resources and support needed, and then step back.
So what are the practices of an investor?
First, define ownership. Make sure everyone knows what they're responsible for and what the expected outcomes are. Wiseman points to John Chambers at Cisco, who often gave his teams majority control in decision-making.
Wow, that's real trust.
Second, give the pen back. Teach, coach, guide, but then hand control back to the individual or team. This is where micromanagers struggle.
It's hard to let go, right?
Yeah, it is. And finally, allow natural consequences. Don't always jump in and rescue people from their mistakes. Sometimes those mistakes are the best learning opportunities.
As long as they're not catastrophic, of course.
Right. So for our listeners, think about an area where you might be micromanaging. Could you step back and trust your team more? What natural consequences could you allow to unfold?
It's about creating that space of growth.
Now, let's tie it all together. This is where we see the 2x effect in action. When you consistently apply these multiplier disciplines,
You get so much more out of your team.
often twice as much, hence the name. And it's not just about productivity, it's about actually making people smarter.
Because you're creating this environment of constant learning and development.
For our listeners who are all about efficient learning, becoming a multiplier is a way to amplify your own impact.
It's like you're leveraging the collective brain power of your whole team.
And it's not magic. It's the result of consistently implementing those 5 disciplines: attracting and optimizing talent, creating an environment for best thinking, extending challenges, fostering debate, and instilling ownership.
So how do we actually become multipliers? It's not like flipping a switch, right?
Wiseman says it's a journey. Even people who have diminisher tendencies can change. She talks about Bill Campbell in Silicon Valley, who made a conscious effort to become more of a multiplier.
What are some strategies for making that shift?
First, work the extremes. Identify your strengths and leverage them even more. At the same time, figure out your diminisher tendencies and work to neutralize them.
So double down on the good, minimize the bad.
Exactly. Second, start with the assumptions. Examine your beliefs about people's intelligence and capabilities. Do you believe people are inherently smart?
Because that will affect how you lead.
Totally. And finally, take the 30-day multiplier challenge. Choose one multiplier practice and commit to doing it consistently for 30 days. It could be asking more open-ended questions or delegating more.
So building those new habits.
Exactly. Wiseman also talks about common reactions people have when they first learn about this stuff. Resonance, realization, resolve.
Like, oh yeah, I've seen that. Oh, I do that sometimes, and okay, I'm going to change.
Exactly. She also addresses challenges like what to do if you're stuck under a diminisher boss or feeling overwhelmed.
And she gives tips for sustaining momentum. Like take it one step at a time, commit to the process for at least a year, and find a community of like-minded people.
It's about playing the long game.
In the end, it comes down to a choice, as Wiseman puts it. Do you want to be a self-proclaimed genius, or do you want to be a genius maker?
And the impact of that choice goes far beyond your team. It affects your whole organization and even the wider world.
So for our listeners, by understanding and applying these multiplier principles, you can unlock incredible potential within your teams and become truly effective leaders.
We've given you a lot to think about today, but if you're hungry for more, definitely check out Liz Wiseman's book, Multipliers.
It's a deep dive into all of this.
Now, we'd love for you to consider this. What if you shifted your focus from being seen as a genius to being a genius maker? How would that change your team's performance, your own impact, and even the way you see yourself as a leader?
That's a great question to ponder. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Ever feel like you're drowning in information? You know, wanting to really get something, but not having the time to dig through a ton of stuff.
Yeah, everyone wants those shortcuts to understanding, right? Like those aha moments where it all clicks.
Exactly. That's what we aim for in these deep dives. And today we're tackling Liz Wiseman's multipliers. It's all about how some leaders can unlock incredible potential in the people around them.
While others, well, let's just say they kind of do the opposite.
Right. It's like some folks have this knack for making everyone around them smarter.
Exactly. Wiseman calls this the difference between diminishers and multipliers.
And it's not just theory, right? She studied over 150 leaders.
Yeah, across all kinds of fields. So it's based on real-world observation.
So for everyone listening, our mission here is to give you the tools to be a multiplier. You know, tap into your team's full potential, become a better leader.
Practical stuff you can use right away.
So we'll break down 7 key ideas from the book. First up, the multiplier effect itself and the mindsets behind it. Then we'll look at how to attract and grow talent, like being a talent magnet, not an empire builder.
After that, we'll get into the kind of environment you create. Wiseman talks about liberators versus tyrants.
Oh, I've definitely worked for both.
Haven't we all? We'll also look at how challengers push their teams to grow compared to the expert who always thinks they have the answers.
Then there's how decisions get made through healthy debate, or by one person calling all the shots. That's debate makers versus decision makers.
And we can't forget about accountability, right? Investors versus micromanagers. Finally, we'll pull it all together with some real strategies to